this session is very much about helping your company who are new to export, some of the things to do to help making export a success for your company. So I'm really pleased. I'm Caroline Wright, Director General Designate of BESA, the British Educational Suppliers Association. I've got a panel of very experienced and new exporters here from government and the private sector. So what I'm going to do is just ask them to introduce themselves, say a little bit about themselves and their companies, and then we're going to just run through a few of the key factors that I think lots of new exporters grapple with. Okay, thank you. So starting with William.
Hi, good morning. I'm William Prieto-Parra, the International Manager at BESA. We work with UK companies who want to go abroad, help them to find the right partners, help them as well with getting grants from government. So if any small to medium enterprises are looking to export, you can contact me at BESA.
Good morning. I'm Steve from Data Harvest. We're about 34 years old. We manufacture equipment mainly for science teaching, technology and science teaching. About 50% of our business is within the UK, and now about 50% is export all around the world through a range of distributors, one of which is sitting there going to grill me, no doubt. We work very closely with BESA and a lot of our export ventures and UKTI.
Hi there, I'm Ian Manzie. I'm an international trade advisor that works for UK Trade and Investment. We're the government department that helps British companies to export. And I'm willing to speak to any clients here, well, potential clients here, who'd like to get some of our advice in the future.
Morning, I'm Sebastian Francis. I'm a co-founder and director of Titus Learning. So we do learning management systems predominantly for the international sector. So we're a new bay, only 2 years old, so pushing into the international market more than the UK, and that's what we started our focus on really with the international sector.
Thank you. So I think one of the key questions is, how do you get started? How do you get started in terms of export? Steve?
For us, purely by accident. We actually got a phone call, I believe it was Poland, rang and said, hey, can you sell your stuff to us in Poland? And we said, yes. And then sat around for a very long time trying to figure out how to actually do that. When we decided to get serious about exporting, then we turned to the experts, and that was UKTI to give us some of the training and the support to understand what selling into an international market actually meant. And we turned to BESA, and for many years William and I have travelled the world doing various shows, meetings, trade missions, and I always find that being part of a group is a very good way to get a feel for the country and to get access to the people that one company on its own couldn't get to. So people at ministerial level, BESA will help open that door.
Thank you.
I think for us it was, as opposed to going for the UK market first, it was a very specific focus going for the international sector. And it was really the British international schools and the US curricular schools that were out there, and really the low-hanging fruit. So as opposed to sort of dominating the UK market and spreading out, it was look at the ones close to home, near time zone, similar curricula, similar cultural levels of sort of reducing those cultural barriers and going for the UK curricular schools close by. That's the ones we focused on to begin with.
Ian and William, what would you add to that in terms of some of the official support and advice there is?
Well, I mean, from my viewpoint, I often advise clients that if you've got some sort of pull from an existing client, it's a good way of getting an understanding of where you might want to target. So you can do some more research on that. You can work with the likes of UK Trade and Investment to do that research. We'll help you to do that. And if you find that it is going to be a potentially important market for you, you can actually speak to our commercial officers that are based around the world, and they can give you some advice on the market, work out whether it really is a good thing, and maybe visit the existing clients and try and get some potentially new clients around that, based on the older vacuum cleaner salesman theory of I'm in your area, which works quite well. Obviously, you could also do a mission, which was already mentioned by Steve previously, but we can help you get potential clients if you need some help on that.
From the BESA point of view, there's two things. First is commitment. You have to be committed to export. It's not just to try it and then if it doesn't work, just give it up. You have to keep going, try again. And research, you have to do lots of research. Before you choose where you're going, you'd have to do lots of research. Is your product ready for the market? Is the market ready for your product? Are you ready to sell your product? Let's say you are one of the lucky ones that you get an order of 1 million or something. Can you deliver that? So you need to be ready for that. And there's a lot of information out there that is free, it's accessible, and there's a lot, UKTI, there's a lot of free information from UKTI. And once you have gathered all that free information, then you can maybe go into having an OMIS or something like that, which is more detailed information about the market for your particular product. But it's no point paying for information that is out there for free. So do a lot of research before you commission a report.
So where else in terms of, we talked about research, so there's research available from UKTI. What are some of the other sources of information and local knowledge about markets overseas?
Answering that one, I think you've got a lot of sources out there like and not to sort of name drop, but the International Schools Group, ISC, the Education Company. There's a lot of data companies out there, as opposed to just getting names and emails and just blasting things out and spamming it, sort of getting that data and analysing it. And the international sector, if you're looking at the overseas English curricular schools, up to about 8,000 or so, but it's really trying to break that down into sectors. So which particular regions are you looking at, which curriculars are you looking at, which level of fees are you looking at, and income for the schools as well, and sectoring. So there's a lot of data companies out there, but it's a case of taking it, breaking it down and not just going for everything at once, and kind of starting small, keeping your focus, and then scaling it out from there. I think that's one of the big things for us.
There's also a lot of free information available on the internet that's quite good at doing that high-level country sort of research. So, for example, the CIA World Fact Book, which is a great resource, tells you about population disparities and statistics. Then there's also the World Bank website, which is very good on countries, telling you about the economy. And then there's a lot of free information on our website. Sorry to plug it again. The UK Trade and Investment website has, we have commercial officers that are based in about 107 different countries in 160 offices. And as well as reactively helping British companies, we also proactively produce doing business guides. So if you go to our website, you can look at a country, see whether it is an easy place to do business from one of our website guides.
Steve?
I think the other area we work with is other companies that are BESA members, that networking within other UK companies. A lot of my distributors I have found and share with other UK companies. So if I'm looking for a new market, for instance, I'm heading out to Serbia in a few weeks, I'm talking to a colleague at Eurotalk who was out there last year telling me exactly what he found and the people that he met and whether there's some crossover and we can work with them. So that network within BESA helps us to actually find those new opportunities. I've lost track of the amount of times I'm in some foreign clime and I pick up the phone and I email or I call another company back in the UK saying, hey, you need to get out here, there's an opportunity, you know, and the same happens for me. So it's that partnership that BESA helps us to all pull together. And when we go out there and sell a unified, here's a British offering, more than just one company, but a group of companies offering a good solution. Not necessarily in the same area. It could be a language solution, a math solution, a science, but somewhere like Hong Kong, who look very closely at what the British do. If we all go out there en masse, we present a much more completed solution. And that often leads to me finding new distributors and new markets. It's that intelligence between companies.
Steve took my point. That's exactly what I said, networking with other companies. Also, some companies have already been dealing with agents, and you, rather than having to go and look for a new one, other companies, you know, because you are complementary, you can help each other there. The other thing I know is quite difficult to start going to exhibitions because they are expensive, even if you get grant support. It's about knowing which market to go, and even if you cannot exhibit, perhaps you can visit the show, and you can do a lot of networking by visiting the show. And although BESA, we're quite good that we can tell you whether a show is good for you or not, still it's quite good if you don't have the financial to do it, for example, this year, but maybe next year, still visit the show. You get a lot of networking, and you do your own research for your own product. And I think that's the best way.
So once you've researched the market, you found a country that you think could be good for your product and your company, how do you go about as a small company with limited budgets? What kind of financial support and funding and help is out there at the moment?
I think especially from our point of view, being only 2 years old, and again, small company, organic growth, and we started with no funding, so the likes of UKTI, BESA, brilliant for funding, for grants, for investment, for advice, and it's, first of all, it's kind of stretching your money as far as you can go. So if you're going out to a show, stick a couple of days on either side, get out and meet schools, do your research, ask your questions, and sales obviously as well. But then whether it's shows like BET or the Global Education Show in Mexico or Dubai or Indonesia, in Jakarta, there's a lot of grants and a lot of funds out there, and the schemes like Passport to Export and the exhibition support as well is really invaluable, sort of getting out to those shows, as well as research and for sales. So for us, UKTI and BESA have been big supports in that sense from a financial point of view.
Yeah, just to sort of, there is one, I mean, a lot of funding isn't around from what it used to be a few years ago because of, austerity, etc. However, there is still a couple of really good options for smaller companies that need to visit shows. So there's something called the Trade Show Access Program. You can find that on our website, and there are some small grants available to take stands at different trade shows on there, certain trade shows on there, including guests, actually. And these are for trade shows abroad. The other thing is, there are also missions that go out there, which Steve touched on previously and also William touched on. So we do run missions on, and you can find those on our website as well. And you might be able to get a market visit grant for that, depending on how that mission's being run and funding. The money might not be massive amounts, but it all helps when you're starting to dip your toe in the water. Because what Steve and William said about realising that you've got to commit resource and time and money to international trade is so true. Because it's a big commitment to make. You've got to be aware of what you're letting yourself in for. And you need to get as much help as you can do.
Yeah, nothing really to add. UKTI, BESA, previously a lot more funding than there is at the moment. But having said that, for me, it's reached the point where it's not so much the funding that's the help, but it's the support that I get and the knowledge that I get. And you could say that there's a financial amount added to the value of that. I've reached the point where quite often I'm going back to a market for the 5th or 6th time, and with the best will in the world, UKTI aren't going to fund that. They've decided I'm in that market already, and they're probably right. So really, for me, it's not so much getting the funding anymore, although it's always gratefully received whenever there is any. It's more about the support and the knowledge that I can get from BESA and UKTI.
Yeah.
And just one more point on that. I mean, sometimes a grant is worth nothing, really, if you're not going to be making the right decisions and planning your strategy correctly. Sometimes you might want to spend a bit of money in order to get some interest back. And one of the best examples of that is when people are actually going into new markets, they really need to get their websites sorted out so that they're accessible in the markets they're going to, that they're not culturally offensive, etc. And we run a program called the Export Communications Review, whereby you spend a little bit of money with a private contractor to get your website, an independent understanding of your website, and the government gives you a very small amount of money towards that. And to be frank, the grant never really makes a difference. It's the fact that you really need to do that if you're going into a new market.
Yeah,
so
we did it. Yeah.
Did you? Oh, good.
We were sitting there thinking we've got this figured, and then we got that independent person in, and within about 10 minutes she highlighted about 5 major things that we'd got wrong. So I would say, yeah, that's definitely worth doing.
It's really helpful.
Also, taking the money apart, being part of a group that will be, when you do a mission with the UKTI, they open doors with government. There's no way you can have a meeting with the Ministry of Education unless you're part of the group and with UKTI, and you go and see the government, and they're waiting for you. Also, if you are arranging meetings, you don't know the country or the city or the traffic, and arranging meetings with UKTI, they arrange it in a way that they know that you can be there, rather than you arrange one here and then another one here, and then you realize that it might take 3 hours to get from one place to the other. So it's little things that help, but maybe financially you don't see it, but it's your time and the amount of research that you get.
That's really helpful. Question for Seb and Steve, really. You're both really successful growing companies, but it's going to be a couple of years yet until you're the size of some of the big international companies. How do you compete with the big boys when you're out in markets?
That's a good one. I think really it's down to our local partner and working closely with them and building that relationship. At the end of the day, we can be more agile and faster to respond in a market than the big guys. And to do that, we need to really understand that market and find out what we need to tailor within our offerings to exactly match that market. It might be as simple as translating. It could be a whole pile of things beyond that in terms of changing the structure of the way something works to match the curriculum or the age requirement. For us, that means getting somebody on the ground, a distributor on the ground who knows education, who understands intrinsically what's required and can work with us to get that product to exactly match. And our size enables us to do that, I suspect, far more quickly than the big boys who've got an inertia to change.
Yeah, I think echoing what Steve said there, it's that being in a position where you're dynamic helps a lot, and then you've got that agility in terms of your development and your sales. But again, I think scaling it down and looking at a particular sector, whether it's a curriculum or a region, and really focusing your energy on one part and sort of scaling it out from that point of view helps a lot. I mean, the bigger boys have got a lot more cash, they're speaking to a lot more people, there's a lot more people on the ground, a lot more events, but it's really, you're going to be speaking to one school at a time, the both of you. Pick your USPs, be confident in yourself and your product, and kind of work it out from there. So confidence, USPs, and focus your energy on a particular spot and scale it out.
That's really helpful. And in terms of, we've talked about websites and really making sure that they're focused internationally. What other marketing tips have you got for smaller budgets on marketing internationally?
One of my favourite things that, especially in the education sector, is making yourself known as being a knowledge or thought leader. I call it ground bait. Effectively, what you do is you often give away free information to make people understand your brand so that you can really have people approaching you as being a leader in the sector that you're trying to sell into. And you will learn more from it because you will understand the pain of your clients, and that is how you sell to clients. And I really am always telling my clients that if they've got someone that really understands the sector, really understands why their product is important and is great in front of people, get them out there speaking. And do it. You can do it for free of charge. It might cost you, but you'll get loads of people back in the end.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
For me, I would say partnership. Find companies in the UK that are complementary to your product and work together. That's the way I think Data Harvest is quite good at doing this with other companies. And also finding the right partner overseas. One of the good things about the UK is about flexibility. It's not about going out there to tell this is the way we do it in the UK and this is the right way. It's more about this is kind of a solution that it works in the UK. Let's see how can our solution be adjusted to your system.
Yeah, I agree. The single most important thing for me is getting the right distributor. If you think about if you were in the UK and you were about to employ a salesperson who was going to go out on the road and represent your company, it's a very, very important decision. You want to be sure you've got the right person with the right skill set. Taking a distributor is exactly the same, but potentially on an even bigger scale, because it's a whole country, not maybe just a county that one salesperson could do very well or not in. So finding the right distributor, finding somebody who understands the market space, but I think also finding somebody that culturally and morally has a very similar outlook on what it is they do to you. If I partner in a country with a huge, great multinational conglomerate, it tends to fail because they've got a very different view of what it is they want to do in the marketplace to the way I feel that we should be working within education. And inevitably we reach a point where I want to go one way and they want to go another. And believe me, losing or changing a distributor is the second most hardest thing you'll do after finding one. It's never an easy option to move to somebody else.
But please feel free that, when you're looking for an agent, if you are choosing is for your product, so don't go, as they say, go to bed with the first one you found, and they promise that they cover the whole country. That's when research comes into power, because some countries, like, for example, Brazil, nobody can cover the whole country. It's very federal, like America. So feel free to really choose who you want, and they need to prove to you that they're the right person for you, rather than you prove to them that you are the right person for them.
And just one more thing on agents and distributors. When it comes down to it, you can change because you need to get the right person. And there are some people out there that will just want to add your brand to their load of brands to make their catalogue look better, their website look better, and will not proactively go out selling for you, and you don't want to make that mistake. And we do occasionally run courses called Agents and Distributors courses. So have a look on our website. They come up occasionally, and it's a good way, because what you're doing is you're managing. It's almost like having a member of your staff. You've got to manage that relationship. You've got to coach them and give them all of the knowledge that they require to sell the service properly for you. And you need to make sure that you don't just leave them alone and hope that they'll do it. You've got to make sure you work on that relationship.
So is that the best place to find distributors, really? The UKTI, there's a list?
Well, no.
How would you go about finding this sort of, it seems like that's the golden nugget. Where do you find them and how would you do it?
I would say through other UK companies have already worked. UKTI, they do have a list, but I think it would cost people. But for example, for this event, they brought about 65 commercial buyers. These are people that are known by the embassy locally. They know them, so they are people that you can work with because they're being kind of vetted. We also, through BESA, we have met companies, international other companies. We collect business cards from people. So that's the only way. But still, even if somebody tells you, this company is good, you still need to do research. It's all on you. Research, I think.
But you can actually use UKTI. I mean, there is a service called the Overseas Market Introduction Service. It's a chargeable service that is heavily discounted by the British government. And what it's about is about getting a commercial officer to introduce you to either a potential client, a potential agent or a distributor. And they might not have an existing list in your sector, in your specific area, but what they can do is they can go out and try and find someone for you. Maybe find a list of 5 people for a certain fee, and you can go in and you'll have the backing of UKTI, so it's like a great British company, real specialist in this area. They're looking to get into this market. We're going to give you the opportunity to meet them first. We've lined them 4 other companies like yourself up. They're coming in. It's a bit of a beauty show. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, we did this in Brazil. The trade desk officer went around 25 companies in and around Sao Paulo for us. Contacted them to see if there was some interest. We were going out to do a show there. By the time we got there, we got interviews lined up with 5 companies. Trying to do that myself from a few thousand miles away is virtually impossible. It was great, and for about £1,000 that it cost us, it just opened doors for us out there. Brazil happens to be a very difficult market, and we haven't really cracked it yet, but at least we feel that we've started that process, and UKTI were very helpful.
And there are some markets that are more difficult. I mean, Brazil
is one of them.
It's got lots of legal weirdness going on in there, lots of stuff with regards to laws changing and things like that. And you really do need a partner if you're going into that market. Whereas in other places you might not do, and depending on your product.
Just on that point, if there are some markets that are more difficult and perhaps less suitable for first-time exporters, where would you consider, obviously product dependent, but what kind of markets are a good first step into the international game?
To be frank, there are some markets that are very big, and unless there is an essential demand for your product that you understand, you might not want to wander into them straight away. So, for example, the likes of the USA is like a lot of different countries, and it's quite a difficult market to break. So you might want to take maybe not make that number 1 priority unless there's a real reason for doing it. And then there are other countries that it's slightly difficult for other reasons to do business, and you might need to have some help on the ground. Yeah. And if you haven't got the finance to do that, it might be more expensive, the likes of Nigeria, for example. They could be great markets, by the way, but they might not be the place that you're going to wander into to start off with. Yeah. And a mission is a great way of finding out, actually. If you could think of somewhere that looks like it could be interesting, you've done a bit of research on your own product, a mission comes up that looks like it's relatively interesting, go with lots of other companies and find out about that market.
And I think picking up on from what Ian and William and Steve said earlier is getting your data and looking at the particular regions, and in particular those with the UK and US curricula international schools. That's worked well for us in particular. And you've got markets like the UAE or certain little hubs in Southeast Asia where you've got a high concentration. So being able to get out there and having 200, 300, 400 schools, international schools within an hour's drive, say, within each other, that worked really well for us, sort of picking the hubs and then again working out from there. So
From my point of view, I don't think there is an easy market, but there are markets with less barriers.
Yeah.
And I think that is the one that you need. For example, in the Middle East with international schools, because of there's no language barrier, and most of the international private schools follow kind of the English curriculum. So there is less change you have to do to your product. So it's about looking for those the one with less barriers. Brazil has barriers on top
Trade
of barriers,
barriers.
on top of barriers, on top of barriers. So it's, unless you're an experienced exporter and you have lots of money, Brazil will be not a country that I would recommend to start with.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say, first of all, I wouldn't let geography be a barrier. One of our first and best markets is Australia. You know, we couldn't really get much further away. And people say, well, yeah, how do you ship to Australia? Well, it's as easy to ship to Australia as it is to ship something, you know, from London to Southampton. You pick up the phone and a guy takes the parcel away. It's gone. You can go to other places that are much closer, Russia. Trying to get things in that border can be a real nightmare, you know, so it's nothing to do with geography, it's more to do with politics and things of that nature. Brazil is particularly difficult for two reasons. I mean, the first one is the import tariffs on almost anything that goes in there. 50, 80, 100, 120%, depends on how the guy feels on the day that it arrives and he stamps it. So, you know, your product is going to at least double in price when it lands, you know, in Brazil. On top of which, from our perspective, we are selling a product that we're trying to sell to the, if you like, the state schools where the government has said, hey, you really should be doing this. Well, in Brazil, that doesn't exist because almost every school is private. Almost every school teaches what it wants to teach. So for us, it's very difficult for us to go and knock on door and say, hey, your government says you should be doing this. There isn't a government telling them they should do this. So that makes it a very difficult market for us. The Middle East, you know, initially we thought, ooh, language barriers, you know, ooh, cultural differences. Actually not. You know, once you've got that translation work done, and yeah, okay, might take you a little bit of time, cost a little bit of money, but once you've got that product localized, believe me, there's a lot more interest. So it goes from being a barrier to a really great incentive, because if your competitors haven't done that little bit of work, you've got a lead on them. You've got that USP going into that market space. My best overseas market, it varies, but probably Japan. So I sell little electronic gadgets to the Japanese. You wouldn't have thought that's the starting point for export, but it happens to be. Southeast Asia is generally very good. Places that used to have an English education system, i.e. the ex-colonies, are generally a very good starting point. They still look very closely at what we do and how we do it, and they still believe that we're the best in the world, and I think we are. And so that will open doors automatically. Just saying you're a British company will open doors.
I'd just like to say thank you very much to everyone on the panel, Seb, Ian, Steve and William.